republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we move to adopt the agenda, do we have any changes? Chief, any changes?
No, I do not have any changes. I'll address some specifics during Fire Chief's remarks.
Okay, anyone else? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll restate those. We have one item under the consent agenda. We have no unfinished business. New business, we have update on new facility. We have an update on the district financial modeling and forecast. We have an update on the district labor management committee. Then we have a part-time finance support position approval. At this time then, we'll move on to public input on non-agenda items. Please hold your comments to 3 minutes or less. Seeing none, we'll close that portion. And the consent agenda, do we have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to new business, update on new facility. And I see that we have the chief and one of his cohorts here.
Good morning, Commissioners. Well, really exciting. We are starting to put big boxes to where we can actually see and touch them. So Chief Worth has been doing a lot of work with our design team, and we have some very preliminary, rough concepts of what our facility will be. Now keep in mind, this is strictly the facility, this is strictly the shell. We're still working on what the training components that are absolutely vital to any new capital infrastructure are going to look like. Right now, the cost per square foot is still at historic highs, somewhere between $540 per square, as high as $600 per square. But we are making good progress. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Worth to kind of talk a little bit through his updates to the designs, because as you look at these models, all except one seem pretty sterile and institutionalized. And looking on Facebook and Beach Talk Radio and different Beach Observer, whenever the facility has been discussed, one of the things the community has definitely responded to with comments is that they really want something to blend with the island motif, and I think it's important for a piece of community infrastructure to be respectful and reflective of the community. So Chief Worth has been capturing some of those comments and playing with the design to go back and forth with the design team. So Chief, you want to talk about your 3D model real quick?
Sure. I'm going to start with that one, or I'm going to give a little summary of these.
Yeah, you can go through them.
All right.
Whatever you feel is appropriate, sir.
For the record, IT guy / building guy. So for the record, Scott Worth, District Chief of Operations for the Fire Department. Commissioners, we had a meeting with the architects. They came in with the 4 models you see on the table in front of you. If you remember last meeting, I had put up the 3D design on the screen to kind of give you a walk around. And that design actually matches pretty close to what you see in that first model. It has the angled front we had talked about that aligns parallel with the Estero Boulevard. These 4 models, like the chief said, these all are somewhere around 27,000 feet. Very rough renderings of approximately what the buildings would look like. So like the chief had mentioned, these buildings, a lot of them look very modern. And with that, modern can bring a higher dollar value per square foot, because you're getting into a lot of features that make it not just a block building. So with that in mind, I met with the architects and we talked about it, and I said, okay, we have 4 models here. Which one is the most affordable? And so what that led to is a meeting with the contractor. The reason we brought the contractor onto the team from the beginning is so they could keep the value engineering, they could keep us in line and say, sure looks good, in design, but very expensive. So we've engaged the contractor. We met with the contractor and the architect at the contractor's office, and they kind of ordered these and said, this model, because it doesn't have the angles and stuff, is probably the most affordable model. But then the other factor, like the chief mentioned, is do these fit the island, style? So with that, at this point, I have the architect on hold, and I said, we're going to bring back some more targeted information. And so been working with the chief, and I'll switch over now to what's on the screen and kind of do what we did last time. Now, I don't have this as the, you can't even see that. So I'm going to leave it like this and jump on my computer. Can you see the screen okay?
Yes. Yeah.
So some of the things we brought into, kind of picking off the library and some other stuff around the island, is picking up some features that might be more in tune with the island. So if I zoom in, you'll see that this is basically, you're looking at a metal roof like you see in many of the buildings on the island. And I'm trying to do something to kind of bring in the old arches from the entrance to the town. I put some arches in here on the bays. Don't know if that's enough to draw people's attention. We might be able to shape the moldings and stuff to make it look a little more like that entrance. But in essence, this is, I don't have a walkthrough of the inside, but this is more of a styling from the outside to kind of match the island. So just using some of the overhangs, canopies, still trying to pick up some of the glass to make it a little more modern, but kind of keeping the roof style in there. Now this one changes. I don't know if you remember the other designs, but you drove in from the front, and this one kind of feels more like the library out front. But it still has under building parking, as you can see inside, and parking on both sides. And I anticipate something like roll down doors on this like the library has, where we'd be able to secure vehicles overnight. So,
Scott, the open part up there on the roof, is that going to be a flat roof or a hip roof? Peaked?
the bulk of the roof would probably be flat roof. And flat roof does allow us value engineering. It's less per square foot than doing the standing seam metal.
How about in terms of overall, in terms of repairs and leaks and things? Is it?
It won't have the longevity that the metal roof will have, but it will have the same wind ratings. I mean, it obviously will make the 170, 180 mile an hour wind ratings that we need, but it won't have the lifespan. So the flat roof that would go on here would probably be a 10 to 15 year roof.
Yeah, that's because the insurance companies are not, if you don't repair or replace the roof every, I think, 20 years,
Yes.
they won't cover it.
Yes.
And so you're kind of stuck, and they are pretty expensive to redo in the end.
They are, and I think the intent with this is that this roof there'd be very little on top of this upper roof for equipment. My thought process, you'll see that we've kind of made a little parapet wall here, and there'd probably be some kind of door out to this roof, and we'd probably have our air conditioners out here. And that type of design is just making it for a very simple to maintain building.
Is the roof on this building flat? Is it?
Well, no, this building has quite a bit of pitch. Now, it may have this type of parapet up top with equipment in it, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
But it definitely has a lot of metal roof on it, a lot of pitch roof.
Have they looked at the difference for yearly insurance premiums for flat versus something with a pitch? And is that significant just a thought, is it significant enough that it would make a difference that you would say, spend the money now, get the pitched roof?
Yeah, I could tell you that, for a few years, I've been responsible for doing our insurance annual risk assessment with the VFIS that insures our buildings, and there is not really an appreciable difference between 32 and 33 that stands out to me as far as our annual premiums for those facilities, correct, Jane?
Well, the premium is different, but the rating is the same.
Yeah, the rating is the same, and one has a pitched metal roof to blend more with the neighborhood. What I can tell you from lessons learned, and even whoever follows me, we'll have it recorded enough. Lessons learned from our last 2 facilities is, one, we will hold our builder and our design team to the letter of the contracts that we've signed. If there's a problem, no matter how painful and how long it is, we will force the contractor to honor their warranty. And we will also ensure that we're following up on all the different manufacturer warranties and maintaining those. So we won't have the same issues that we ran into with Station 32 and 33, particularly with the roof. That roof needed to be replaced probably 7 years to 10 years ahead of schedule.
Yep.
Due to, not following the warranty process. So we will have a different experience once this facility comes up.
I like the design, though, that it gives almost a faux peaked roof because of the smaller areas. So it looks very much like their peaked roofs, even though the top may not be. But that's a nice design right there. I think it looks real nice.
The hard part, and that's kind of where the architects got to, is they call it massing. And that's kind of taking a big 3-story cube and making it not look like a cube.
Right.
So the other thing with the pitched roof is that there is still some question, like the pitched roof on that model is our height requirements and staying below.
Oh,
so,
yeah,
and there's some discussion about these accessories, like this elevator shaft might be okay to exceed the height elevation and have the pitched roof, where the main building might have to be under the
Makes
30,
sense.
35 feet above.
What, is it 35 back there?
30 or 35.
Above base flood.
Above base flood.
Which is what, 18 now, right?
Well, the lot here has 3 different zones.
Gotcha.
Well, of course
It
it
has
does.
3 different-
Of course it does.
11, 12, and 13. And then for critical structures, we have to have that first floor 2 feet above flood. So probably about 14 feet is where the first floor will land. Now, they do know that the flood maps are changing and may come down by a foot, but that's not really going to affect us because of the underbuilding parking. We got to be, we got to be high enough to clear the tie beams and stuff.
So 1435 is what you're shooting for.
Yeah, so 14 and then another 30, 35.
Excuse me, Chief, what's the cost difference between a metal roof on the main building and the flat roof on the main building?
I don't know.
You didn't really
Off the
cost.
top of my head, I don't know. Talking with the contractors and the architects, they collectively said, yes, the flat roof is going to help you save money over the pitch roof.
Okay.
That's why even up north, they build schools and that with flat roofs, because it's so much less expensive. But of course, you shouldn't do
Right.
that because of the snow,
Right.
But how much does a flat roof cost? In 10 years or 20?
Right.
How much would that cost to replace, though? mean,
Yeah,
is it-
I guess that's what I was wanting to know. You crunch the numbers between the money you save today and the money you're going to spend in the long run, as well as the aesthetic appearance. And I know you were trying to sneak in under the limit there, but all you have to look at the whole picture and
Right.
maybe determine what's the, and can you put a slight pitch on the flat roof? I mean, that's what we did at Estero Cove.
You can, yes.
It's very slight, it's just enough that the wind won't suck it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had thought about the possibilities of using a parapet wall with putting a pitched roof behind it, with solar in mind.
Right.
So
Oh, yeah.
there are things you could do, but, there are metal roofs that will go down to, and I think it's 2 and 12, so almost flat, very low pitch. Those are your premium roofs, they're mechanically rolled seams and everything else.
Right.
Metal can go pretty low on its pitch.
I will tell you, water is the enemy when you have a
It
flat
is.
roof.
Absolutely it is.
Is there any?
My family's in the roofing business. I've done a lot of
Oh.
flashing and chasing leaks.
Okay, you know
so
exactly.
I absolutely understand.
For some
Yeah.
reason, here on this island, roofs don't have a good reputation for surviving.
They don't.
Yeah. Is there any thought, if it is flat, that it could be an area for helicopters to land if necessary, or no?
Probably
No,
not.
okay.
No. We're not planning to build it with a clear story to have an elevator out to the roof deck, and it would change the structure
Okay.
significantly. So we did get into talking a little bit about the structure, And collectively, we're thinking cost-wise and ease of building and everything, and the first floor being all concrete, and then possibly a steel skeleton for the second and third floors. So, with that being said.
Then that wouldn't be a weight load, yeah. Got it.
Scott, on this design, where would the training tower, so to speak, be
I
located?
haven't drawn it in, but talking with the chief, we're trying to possibly pull the training tower away altogether. So in this design, we would probably take that second stairwell that we were looking at, make an exterior, pull it back into the building, and separating the training part further from the building.
So it wouldn't be going up, I didn't understand that. Is it going up inside the building, or it'll be a freestanding outside?
So once we sat down and we started critically looking at the initial concept, which is the model that's drawn, we were trying to do a combination stairwell that's required by code and a training space. But once we sat down and we critically evaluated it, my directions to Scott is we need to incorporate more of the training concept because it's such a critical need. And as we see with traffic and based on my meetings with the county and the county economic development, it's going to get more and more challenging to send our on-duty resources to a remote location. We will never have a full-scale training field here. We just can't afford it, and there's not a place for it. But we need to get as much training incorporated with this new facility. Otherwise, I would not be doing you guys any favors without saying that is an absolute critical need. So I envision it being detached and separated from the facility.
Are there any opportunities for grants for the training side? I know the building's probably less likely, but.
Well, that comes into the funding conversation that I was going to have with you guys once
Okay.
Scott was done.
I'm done unless there's other questions.
No, great job. That's,
Yeah, thank
I
you.
like the look of your concept.
So Scott gets to have all the fun stuff. So what I'm going to ask you guys is, feel free to take pictures of these with your phone.
Great.
Look at them. Look at them at home. They're not really ready to, for public comment, but for your comments, your thoughts. If you're sitting at home, 10 o'clock at night, and you have a thought about a facility or a design element, feel free to email me, copy Scott, because he's working in real time now. Things are starting to move a little quicker in this process. So feel free to email me directly and CC Scott with any design thoughts or element thoughts that you have.
Great.
So on my end, what I have officially done at this point is I've reached out to partner agencies to see and gauge what interest and what potential contribution partner agencies like Lee County Sheriffs. Really interesting, I learned something kind of interesting to me is even though the Sheriff's Office has their own budget, the county is responsible for maintenance and facilities for sheriffs. So also reached out to the Public Safety Director. If the county, not only public safety, but if the county envisions needing a presence on the island, whatever that presence may be, the opportunity is now. Now, it's not going to be something free. Obviously, we're going to look for a contribution. But I've started having those conversations officially with them. So we started this project. I know you guys had an initial number in your mind when we purchased the property. Obviously, we're kind of in unprecedented economic times. So Jane and I spoke with Andy, because Andy has several different entities and deals with a lot of funding options. We have identified Lewis, Longman, and Walker as having some very specified expertise in funding options for special districts. So Andy thought it would be a good idea for us to at least start, do a consultation with them. So at this point, Jane and I are going to start consulting with Lewis, Longman, and Walker, and we are going to start evaluating potential options for debt services. That's going to be critical, and it'll go to our next agenda item that we're going to discuss. But that's my plan right now, and hopefully either at the March business meeting or possibly even the April work session, we can start discussing some funding options and what the board's preference is for debt services on a facility, so we know, are we gonna proceed or maybe pause, design, permit, and then pause until we see what the cost of construction is gonna do.
Great.
I know you've told us before, but I don't recall off the top of my head. We're ending our debt service on 33
Yes.
soon.
Yes,
When is that?
next year.
Next year.
Next year, correct, we will be done.
So
Yes.
timing-wise, this could fold right in fairly.
Potentially,
Well.
the debt capacity of the district is what I'm concerned with. Absorbing this large a debt capacity when all of our other costs of services, cost of labor, cost of fuel in the truck are exponentially increasing. I'm worried about our debt capacity.
Right.
So, we need to move cautiously and judiciously as we look at our options to manage our debt.
Are we still looking at like a 2080 model for the debt service on the building, or a little higher on the debt side?
Depending on what the GMP comes in, I would like to be at a 2080 model for debt services, but that's gonna depend on, obviously, right now at 26,000 square feet, and that's just what you see. That's none of the training elements, that's not the site development that's gonna be required, a fueling system that's gonna be required. Just for that building, just for what you see, we're looking at somewhere between $15 and $18 million. So that obviously changes that 20% threshold.
Can we go back to this and finish this agenda item off?
Yes.
Of the models, okay, what is it we're looking at on the table? There are 4 models, possible models, and which one is the one that you had on the screen?
None.
What I
Okay.
have on the screen is none of these.
Okay,
I've started a different design that I can guide the architects with to say, we believe we need to get more island style.
okay, because the little faux peaked roofs, are they on one of these models?
Scott, can we just pass those around? We'll just make it easy.
Yeah.
They're lightweight, so
Yeah, that's. oh,
everybody can get a,
I can tell you, if you showed those 4 models to the public, they would say ugly, really ugly.
and expensive.
And not bad.
Well, but they did that with the library. The library has the same, almost the
yeah,
same.
cost effective for it.
Most cost effective.
And is that one enormous bay door instead of 3 separate ones, or that's just modeling? That would be an expensive door.
Are these portholes?
Right.
Yeah, that's a big one.
I love it. I think that was the prettiest, but it doesn't necessarily fit.
Yeah,
It
the
needs to have
angle-
a metal.
Right.
You can't.
I mean, it can be
From
fake.
that side, right.
Well, you can.
Yeah.
And then on
Maybe
the,
we're talking about putting that to the.
on the
You're
glass.
losing space.
Yeah.
The thought off the top of my head is
Because he was
that,
going with the property.
do we want to utilize glass
but I
somewhere
don't
other
see
than
how-
a ladder well
You know,
stairway?
it just seems to
Library
me,
or-
well, that's got an angled wall
I mean,
too.
it's-
Yeah.
You're
Three
not
of
spending
them.
time in
Oh,
there as,
two
you
of
know,
them.
just
Two of them.
thinking, I've worked in completely locked down skiffs in the military where you have no daylight all day long, and it's horrible for employee morale.
Our headquarters building was built.
Exactly, and then you've got
Like that.
the other side with, nice
So when I
ambient
showed
lighting.
them glass,
This
and
is-
then possibly with the small cubes, or
Right.
something like they did over on these.
But it's, I don't
So this
know
would
if
sit,
it's-
this would be tropical shores and this would be.
Correct.
Yeah.
The commission.
That one's expensive.
The commission was trying to do something with arches,
This way,
Yeah.
I think,
and that
because
was
of
an
the property.
initial.
Yeah, that's not pretty.
No, there was a reason he
those
did
are-
this.
I like the
Angle.
concept you came up with
So in the
giving
interest
some
of
features
selling the
to
property and running
stylize it a
together
little bit, but not
something is
so
matched
large that they'd be extremely costly,
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
That's why. he
I'm not a
did
huge
that.
fan of
If I
the
remember
ultra
right,
modern
yeah,
look
last
on
meeting.
this model,
I'm
so.
just thinking,
Right.
okay, this is.
You know, it's a very delicate
Right.
balance, like
But
you
the
think,
permanent-
John, between cost and appearance.
It is. Have you, I'm sure you have, you've seen the Hertz building over in Estero, correct?
Yes.
So with
This
that
looks
that
like,
frosted
hauling the
shading they
rodents.
did on the glass to kind of make it blend into the
The
neighborhood.
chariots are coming.
I think that was a very creative way of doing it.
The Roman Coliseum is coming.
See,
It's
this
back.
is- This is.
Yeah, they have-
Roman
they use
Coliseum.
the-
I don't know, guys like the ones I sent Scott.
Right, yeah, you had to block it up, yeah.
Put a different
I don't
color
know,
on it.
ask him.
Scott,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I didn't
It's all right, no,
mean-
no.
Yeah.
Okay, we're debating the angled wall. Okay, in this one, you eliminated the angle, you squared it off. Is this bigger? Did you do it this way, or did you have to go back that way?
It'd be similar square
No,
footage.
So when they squared it off, they pushed this point back, pulled this point out, so you got same square footage.
I think we
Same
should
square
buy
footage,
all.
but sitting on the lot differently. Didn't you say you did
Yeah,
that
why
with the
not?
road out front? Was that same?
We did,
Yeah.
we did. So if you,
So you
our
went like
lot,
this, right?
Commissioner Fleming said
well,
all four.
what we did, can imagine if we cut it here.
The Fire
And took
Village.
this and just put it there.
The fire.
Just don't lose the square
We'll have the Fire Village.
Can we put in a zip line from?
Is that a design element? That's why they did it that way? Okay,
It's just they were trying to get a look.
to match the
What
road
does
or
that do to the
whatever.
rooms inside though? Is that?
But it doesn't do anything to the rooms, because the way we laid the floor plan out, we're following a,
The angle.
parallel line here, and it creates a small wedge, and that basically was gonna serve as a little waiting area to the chief's office, or, you can collaborate in that type of environment versus going to the. That's how we were gonna use that little wedge.
We actually had angled
Yeah, the
walls
firefighter
in
floor,
headquarters.
it just, the longer.
It was a little awkward in some situations, but
Well, it would create that same shape.
I've been in buildings that have had them.
Yeah, it's on both floors.
They work. I mean, they're,
So the question too is, I know you were matching.
but I know the expense of,
the
anytime you
angle of
create
the
an
road,
angle
but
other
if
than
you sell
90
the property in
is
front,
an
it goes
uptick in
to
cost.
doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Then it doesn't really matter. You're not even gonna see that, because it'll be behind
Carpenters
something
have to do
else. So at that
calculations,
point,
and
you
then
might as well
then
just
the
go
architects have to
the
come in.
box kind of look they were doing.
Personally, I kind of like this one, except for the Roman Coliseum.
yeah, I concur with
But other than
that. I do like the, see, I think it's the
I like
roof
that.
that attracts you, because these others are ugly, uglier, and ugliest, and then that's not bad.
That's what I'm saying, I like the roof.
I like the roof.
You don't like Frank Lloyd Wright? Looks like Frank Lloyd Wright
I
designed
know,
it.
I like it, I just don't think it fits with the beach.
I lived in a house similar to that once.
That's a one.
Maybe that's why I don't like them all that much.
Looks like that house that they just redid on the
There's
south
maybe
side there,
two
right?
condo, there may be two big homes that
Uh-huh.
have that look, and the rest are all like this.
Yeah.
What kind of-
Where's the, if we're doing beach, where's the model with the shack?
The
That's
the
this
cheeky
roof.
in
See,
front.
that's a tiki hut roof
I want
right
to know where the
there.
bar is. Where's the bar in it?
Yeah.
And we,
Would this be the?
Where's the lounge?
That was the concept for the external stairwell, and then if you can.
So if you were gonna try to put
talk about
a training
storage
tower or
room,
area separate, is it gonna go back by the canal?
Jackie, how much are the tickets for the Lovers Creek?
I don't know.
Do we gravitate the whole building a little closer to
VIP.
a stereo
Because you want
and
VIP,
leave space for
let Tina know,
training down
Karen,
by
all
the
girls,
canal
because
area?
They didn't close out to the general
We
public.
were
And the VIP
looking
is,
at
you come a
maybe
couple hours early,
an
top
area
shelf.
right
Extra
Everything.
orders, up
Apparatus
top,
page.
you know, you get like access up top.
Yeah, I haven't been up there yet.
It's
Since,
so
yeah.
Could we put it over on the other side of
They did,
Tropical
they just
Shores? There's
finished,
an
don't
ugly
you?
building over there. They
So,
wouldn't,
They just
Here's
finished
Tropical Shores.
the last exhibit.
here's the apron.
yeah.
There's an area of the lot we thought about
I
right
thought I
here.
took a picture of it, but I did.
That way apparatus
And it
can
looks
use the
so nice.
parking
It
lot
looks
to set up
like the guy literally is
apparatus
kayaking
operations.
through the
like
mangroves and you're
Wow.
standing underneath.
To train pulling off equipment and setting up.
Deploying the aerial,
Yeah.
things like that. So we could use this area. We also thought about this area up off of Gulf Beach Road, where we
We've
can
got a
have it
condo, and
and
there's
see,
a
have the
workout
same
room
level
on the
of
second floor. You can
Have you ever seen the shipboard firefighting training
Well, it helps
module?
somewhat, but minimally.
Yes, I
People
have.
around them, no
Just a
matter
curiosity,
what
could we take a 40-foot shipping container and
weights that are-
There are training tower options like that.
it's affordable,
Yes.
it's not a living space, so the codes are entirely
That
different.
makes it great.
And
I
this-
tried to get building
this,
6 that's building down by us. to
Training
put
tower
theirs
is
in
different
the
code, so it's not.
Right, that's what I mean, yeah, sure, especially if we're not connected or even,
Yeah. portable
disconnected from the
training
building,
options,
right.
portable
Yeah.
training tower options, they're-
and that's something we could possibly do even before we get into this phase. I mean, to at least keep our training
Absolutely.
beach-centric and
Absolutely.
keep units in service and nearby.
Long term, we're talking about.
Just a thought.
There's a lot of different options.
There are,
we can
yeah.
do to go ahead and separate them.
Plywood,
Is that
lots of
more
plywood.
expensive
Except for that's gone up in cost too, so.
It's not,
I think
it's,
that's
like
challenging.
this one, it's all,
And Scott always reminds me of it because
Easier.
we're talking about the Connex.
Mhm.
is this more expensive to have that?
Training tower.
Right.
Putting it outside the.
Is how is the community gonna line
No,
up?
because it's still the same. It's
Is
still the
that gonna
same
bring
linear
motivation?
footage.
Are we gonna get, like I said, it's big enough, whether it's here or Shriver?
10 more
You,
people.
you can paint anything to look terrific,
That would make sense to me.
especially those containers. I mean, they're,
This is true, this is true.
So this is definitely
So,
one of
but
the
yes, it's something we
possibilities.
look at.
okay. just curiosity. I have a friend who's in that business on the other coast.
Oh,
And,
really? Training towers?
no, in the firefighting training for shipboard personnel for their certification.
Scott, a training tower wouldn't be
Some of the best training I've ever had.
$500
It's fascinating. They were the crew that
I mean,
the
it's
Jacksonville
just-
fire 2 years ago on the shipping
Yeah,
container ship. He was the lead crew on
Trying to
that.
take that second
The,
one and make it dual purpose.
That was back when he was assistant chief at Port Canaveral. And the scale and response of the private crews that came in with pump systems that were drawing water directly out of the bay just to cool the ship. And the video, I'll see if I can get Johnny to send it to me, because he has helmet video of the internal firefighting efforts going on in the ship, and these were open bay cargo. They weren't containers. Vehicles, dry goods, whatever, and everything is ablaze, and the temperatures are just ridiculous on.
We're good,
You know,
thank you.
they cooled the hull basically to keep it from being a shipwreck.
Okay, everyone had an
Thank you, sir.
opportunity to look at
Yep.
these? Thank you.
Yes.
Nice. You made these? I was going to say, well.
He doesn't have that much free time.
Well,
I asked the same question.
yeah,
So I jokingly said we get Scott some Legos and he could just give it to him.
yeah, that's not a bad idea. Okay,
So
thank you.
Did our architects design these for us, or did you do, okay.
Okay, and did, one other question, did, you were mentioning the sheriffs and those kind of things. Are we still talking about a sheriff's presence in there?
We know that their rank and file has a perceived need, but we do not have an official request for need. We are going to, regardless of whether or not they officially partner with us, we're gonna make sure that they can use the facility, that they, just like we have with Station 32 and 33. The on-duty deputies will have access, they can come, do a report, use the facilities. We're gonna open it up to our partners in law enforcement, whether or not they officially partner with us or not. They're gonna have a space to safely write a report and use a clean bathroom.
Okay, and are we going to publicize that? Because that seems to me a good PR move.
Yeah, we haven't publicized that relationship, but we certainly could.
Yeah, it just, maybe the others have comments on that, but it seems to me that, you know, we're talking about a lot of money that we're going to be spending for the building, and if there was a multi-use
Yes.
rather than just fire, even if it's not being used, at least we're advertising that there's a cooperative.
Well, even if we could work in an office area where they had
Yeah.
external access, so, you know, in the middle of the night, they could pull up, park the cruiser, go in, and they would have access to a report writing room and a restroom facility there.
Yeah,
Well, I feel if we're going to give a dedicated space, not just they come in the firehouse, but if they have an actual office, they have to pay.
I agree.
mean, we're
I think they
looking
would
at,
want,
you know,
I
we're-
think they
we're
would want
looking at a
to if
building
they were
that we
going to
can't
have
afford.
that, but
You
then
know,
they get to put their.
The sheriff's got a lot more money than we do.
well, that's what you were alluding to, that the sheriff doesn't actually pay for it, it's the,
It's the county. So
County.
I've opened up, I'm waiting to have an official meeting with the sheriff, but I have already discussed with the director of public safety, you know, now is the time, if there is needs for any facility, office space, any presence, now is the time. We're at the point where we need to know whether or not there's an official interest.
great,
So,
okay. Anything else?
Just a question, I know we've discussed it one-on-one before, Chief, but are we allowing for a little extra space down the road for green energy implementation into the building? If we want to add solar or a battery backup system or something that's on the green side, which the country seems to be pushing more and more towards?
Yeah, so if we were gonna build a building for future needs, what we'll do is just put in conduit. That way you can pull any cabling, any
Right.
wire you need. In most of these designs, there's a good amount of flat deck space, flat roof space, whether we do the one I showed or most of these. If we ever did solar,
Okay.
we did it on top of it.
Sounds good.
Well, that brings up, how about the EVs? You know, eventually, we're going to have EVs, not necessarily the trucks, but the ancillary vehicles. Do we have chargers?
So you can almost think of our vehicles now as EV, because they all have onboard chargers and they stay plugged in when they're in quarters. So that's one of the things I talked with the chief about with the underbuilding parking, is some of those parking spaces would be would have drop cords already. So to answer your question, yes, we
Good.
would put in the electric and have drop cords if we end up doing electric vehicles for snow.
Which supposedly we're all going to have those eventually, so, yeah, and we're looking 50 years ahead, so I think that's important. And there's enough infrastructure there to put that kind of power into our building.
Sure, yeah. As far as charging stations go?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be one of those things where the generator will be sized to run the whole building. So in the event of a hurricane or something like that, not the whole building, you're not using all your circuits. There's certainly some circuits that could be sacrificial during a storm. Make sure.
Okay.
Good power chargers.
Good.
One of the other things, talking about the green concept, is we're trying to design a process where we're going to collect all our gray water, stormwater runoff in an underground cistern that will be piped directly to a hydrant. And our intention is to try to use as much of our stormwater, we have a lot of it, a lot of our runoff from washing the trucks and things like that, try to repurpose that for vegetation as well as training.
Great.
So we're not tapping off the municipal source.
One last thought on just looking at the concepts for the buildings. What's our estimated lifespan of the structure after completion?
Typically, with good maintenance, you could plan on a lifespan of about 50 years. And that's obviously, that's general guidelines, but we know that with proper maintenance and proper care,
Right.
and just like we heard from structural engineers last week at the Beach Condo Association meeting, the key is being proactive in your maintenance and being diligent on water intrusion and being diligent not to delay your structural maintenance. So I'll tell you 50 years. In reality, we could probably get 70 if we're diligent and appropriately
And
fund.
I think that's important for the
Yes.
taxpayers especially to think of this as, it's not a
30 years.
five-year,
yes.
$18 million expense. This is a long-term, lifelong for most of us here.
Right, and add what the chief said, that was actually a big component of the conversation we were having about this building with the contractor. So there was some question of, do we come out of the ground and go masonry,
Right.
columns for the first floor, and then do, steel beams? And myself with the contractor said, no, that anything exposed, the parking area, that all needs to be all poured concrete. Everything needs to be sealed up tight. If we're gonna have a metal skeleton, it's gotta be inside conditioned space
Right.
to protect it.
Just for corrosion.
I agree.
For corrosion and stuff like that, so.
Well,
Those are the conversations where it's the benefit of
Sure.
having a contractor.
How old is 31 right now? Is it 50 years old?
Let's see, the original
70.
portion of Station 31 was
47.
built in 1949.
49, okay, then
That's the
that's
training
70.
room, and where the
That's-
crews are currently living, that was originally built in 1962. It had a massive renovation in 2001. 2002, we did a renovation, kind of gave it a facelift. So we've had that facility for quite some time.
And that's why this one will probably last, because of the upgrade of the materials, it'll last longer than that one. And that one's still viable. Not great,
Yeah,
but it's.
absolutely, and by the time we start coming out of the ground, there is going to be some enhanced best practices based off of Surfside. I mean, even the conversation we were listening to about, protecting your rebar that goes into concrete from corrosion and sitting out on the construction site for too long, and, so you keep that tight bonding with your concrete and your metal,
Right.
Metal rebar. So there's going to be some enhancements, but the key to it is proper maintenance and ensuring good fiscal discipline and funding maintenance of the facility year after year.
The only question I've been getting from members of the public have been in regards to our existing buildings and properties and what we're going to do with those. And in general, I've said, well, we hope to sell them and recoup some of our expense for the new building construction. I just wanted to make sure that was still kind of the general thought as far as the district's plan.
My plan or my recommendation to all of you is that we we proceed as we originally have discussed several times. I want to bring all of our services together in one central location and take the district from having to maintain 4 facilities to 3 facilities. I think one, over the long haul, that's the fiscally responsible thing to do. And 2, I think it represents better service to the community. Right now, having them, if you need administrative services, you come to one location, permitting and plan review, they have to drive off island and fight traffic. And 90% of our need from the community is with Jennifer and her team. So, yes, that would still be my executive recommendation to all of you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, then let's close that portion. Thank you, Scott. It was nicely done. Appreciate that. Next one is updating district financial modeling and forecast. So,
All right, Commissioner, so this is a topic that we discussed at our board retreat. Jane and I, working with Dr. Banyan, and also based on some recommendations from Commissioner Lezak, we have identified a wonderful resource called at GCU, called the Regional Economic Research Institute, which does a variety of different consulting, does a variety of different financial and economic studies and evaluations, not just here for a region in our county, but throughout the state and even in the nation. So Jane and I met with them last week while I was in Orlando. We did a Zoom meeting, and we gave them kind of what we were looking for. We wanted to build some financial modeling tools and forecasting tools that we could gauge a variety of different economic factors: cost of labor, rate of inflation, our ad valorem tax increase. So we have more of a modeling than simply what we have historically been doing, looking back and forecasting forward. Something that gives us a little bit more complexity and helps us make better long-term fiscal decisions, which is going to be critically important as we look at debt services for this new facility. So they are working on a scope of work for us and costing that out, because they're going to bring in a variety of different resources to help with our project, and they're very excited about it. So I wanted to provide you that update and let you know that we're waiting on a proposal, and we're actually in the process of scheduling a meeting next week with them to review that scope of work. So I'm looking to have something hopefully to either present to you or update to you at our next work session or business meeting.
How far forward a forecast are we anticipating?
Well, typically the forecasting is generally recommended no more than 5 years, with your highest reliability of 3 years. Now, I have done several of my own economic models based on SMEA, time-weighted averages, but that's me doing it. I'm not an economics or financial expert. Jane and I have done our own modeling, but there's a variety of factors economically that we want to pull in and capture. So, did I miss anything there, Jane?
No, I think that pretty well covers it. I mean, we have financial forecasting models. We are looking for them to help us refine
Those tools.
some of the numbers that will go into the forecasting model as it relates to, what we can reasonably expect, to put in for CPI and labor costs and things of that nature, based on what they have in their research.
Questions? Jackie? Ron?
Nothing.
Yep.
No.
So that, we can look forward to that in the next month or so. Is that
Yes.
right? Perfect. Okay, and if nothing else, we move on. Our next item is update on the District Labor Management Committee, and I assume that's the chief?
Yes, sir. So, again, just wanted to give you guys an update after the board retreat. I have presented the concept of the Labor Management Committee to our labor partners. Just so happens, one of our DVPs has transitioned away from the organization with BC Land, and there has been a recent labor election, so we will have 2 new DVPs. So that's slowing down the process a little bit, but overall, the comments have been, or the concept has been well received. So now we just have a little bit of a slowdown, because while we're in this transition period to the new district vice presidents officially take the reins, it's got to go through the executive board for Local 1826, and they're representing a variety of agencies. But overall, our feedback to the concept has been very well received, and there's been a lot of praise and kudos to this board for supporting such an initiative. So I will keep you updated on that as progress is made.
Great. Questions? Comments? Okay, thank you, Ron. Okay, next item, part-time finance support position approval.
All right, Commissioners, so this is the one really big new business item that I have coming before you today. So in my assessment, in my reorganization of the district, one position is in my assessment need of some specialized support and assistance, and that is our financial section of the organization. It's the backbone of everything we do. Finance, obviously, as you know, is the backbone of our operations. And thankfully, Jane is an incredibly reliable employee, but we don't have some redundancies in those financial processes and accounting processes. Traditionally and historically, it's always been seen as an ancillary duty to some administrative person who may not have the abilities or the skill set necessary to truly be efficient. Now, we're lucky that we have Angela and we have Colleen, who do their best efforts, but it's still a very specialized skill set. So working with Jane, we wanted to be good fiscal stewards, so we would like to create a part-time accounting and payroll specialist. Our payroll process, due to the complexity of our CBAs and the way we compensate our employees, is an extremely complex task. Met with one commissioner this week and said, well, payroll is walking through the process, and I think when we walk through the process with the person that assists Jane, I mean, I look at it when we do our payroll, it's an all-day, 1-2 day task. And before Colleen came on board, Jane was doing that by herself. So I bring this position before you. We are hoping we can retain a accounting and payroll specialist on a part-time basis. But with today's labor market, I don't know. So I may have to regroup and bring something before you, but I think in an effort to be good fiscal stewards, a part-time position is where we should start at.
Okay, at this time, we'll allow for public comment. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Seeing none, we'll close that portion. Comments, questions? Ron?
This is a position I believe is necessary, and it could be you could find someone who's already volunteering. Like the town has an audit committee, I believe. Somebody with that kind of background possibly be interested. I mean, there's a lot of talent on the island. They may not want to work full-time, so this could work for us. But regardless, it's a position we need to, Jane needs some help.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree with Ron saying we definitely need to get Jane some help here. Plus, it helps to extend the knowledge base. So, if Jane is sick, or you take some time off, or, those kind of things that happen, there's somebody there who understands the process and is able to articulate that.
Ron, does this fit within our budget?
Yes, this fits within our budget. We're doing, as far as the administrative budgets for administrative positions, we are well within budget.
Okay. Jim?
I only want to say that in my experience, payroll is critically important to employees. And they want to have a competent source they can go to when they have a question about their payroll, and they do come up. So I think this is a good move for the district to get someone in place that's going to focus primarily on payroll and would be in a position to be responsive to the needs of employees, as well as assist Jane and the district in making sure we're doing things correctly.
Okay. John?
I agree with everybody else's comments. It's such a critical position, and Jane, I know, has always been amazing at staying on top of it and putting in probably more than her share of hours in doing so. The one thing I'd like to see, if possible, is looking for an individual that would be able to grow with the organization. I know Jane probably has some long-term plans, and that would include not working. To find somebody who could transition to her role when that day comes, I think would be a double bonus. I don't disagree that we have a lot of talent on the island, but I've personally experienced hiring retirees that just want to do a little something, and they wouldn't be prepared for a full-time position should that opportunity arise. I think it's important for the future of the district to have somebody that we can grow and mold into Jane 2 or Jane Junior or whatever we're going to call them down the road.
Well, may I address? So Jane does have future plans at a future date, 15 years from now.
We hope.
But Jane and I, that is already on my radar, and we've already discussed it, and creating this part-time position. We have been very fortunate to have some very dedicated individuals in our organization and our administrative team, and Jane's one of them. One of the things, especially coming back from FBELRA, the new labor market is changing, and we would be hard pressed to find somebody to handle the workload that she has absorbed over the last several years. So this is feeding into that position, and I agree, ideally, hopefully we can find somebody who wants to transition. But getting this position, a dedicated resource, is going to go a long way to attracting and retaining, and Jane and I already have draft plans of what her transition in 15 years looks like.
That's great. Well, I think it's impossible to find somebody willing to take Jane's position as it is now. Thank goodness she's willing to do it in as long as she can, or as long as she's willing to. But and of course, this interim person or this part-time person isn't going to be able to replace Jane. But if that person was in place, we could perhaps find someone that would be willing to work full-time in Jane's position if she were to leave. So I think it's a really paramount importance to hire somebody. And I had a question about the qualifications. It's 2 years continuous full-time experience, that's obvious, but experience in governmental accounting for special district or similar public agency preferred. Okay, so what might they work at if they didn't do it? Unlikely they're going to find somebody coming from a special district.
So we're going to look for somebody who has public sector accounting or finance experience. That's going to be our preference. If not, a close second in my mind's eye, and I'll let Jane talk here in a minute, will be somebody from the private sector who has worked specifically in accounting, finance, payroll administration. It's just learning the different rules and set of principles in Ron's mind, but I'll let our expert talk. Am I saying that correctly, Jane?
Yes, well, as it relates to payroll, firefighter and police payroll are very complex, and they're very different. It's not your traditional 40 hours. They have a whole different set of rules. And so too does governmental accounting. I mean, it's different from the private sector and corporate accounting. So while you can teach somebody that, and it's not terribly difficult to do that if they have an accounting background, if we can find someone that already has that skill set, that's wonderful. And we should be able to develop a payroll test that will be able to detect very quickly if they know the rules and regulations for nice to find someone that has some governmental accounting background, but again, as long as they have some good accounting skills, you know, training is definitely a possibility there, so.
Because I think, I know, we all know some accountants in that, and people that have been in corporations, but the payroll portion, chances are they weren't involved in payroll at like a corporation. If they were involved in payroll and not the accounting portion.
Right. That's why we're, you know, it's preferred if we can find someone that has worked in a government setting, specifically in the payroll environment.
Okay.
You know, that's the big piece. I guess we'll, you know, every time we kind of marry some skill sets together, we think, well, we're never going to find someone with these skill sets, and somehow may take 2 or 3, you know, rounds of the hiring process, but we've been very fortunate to find some great people that have a variety of skill sets that marry up into one position.
And especially if we're specifically looking at people with government background, as you all know, it's not uncommon for people to transition within government units as well. So you may start off as a payroll assistant and transition over to an accounting department. So, so it's not uncommon to find people that have the basic foundation of the skills we're looking for. And as Jane said, we may have some specific industry training that we need to do, but I think like so many other positions we have, if we have the foundational skill set, which is very specified to the world of accounting and payroll, if we have the right person who's willing to learn, we can work with that.
So at 30 hours or less, they would be at will and wouldn't, we could delete the position at any time, or?
Yeah, they're an administrative position. They're at will. They're not represented. They have an FRS benefit, but no health insurance or PPL or anything like that. And it's as needed. So, you know, if there's a week where Jane has no work for them, they may not get to 30 hours, or they may have 8 hours, or they may have 10 hours. It's going to be really dependent on what Jane's needs are and what's the needs of the district at that time.
And their skill level.
And they're still up.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, any other comments?
Just a question. I know previously I've used payroll management companies for employee benefits and that type of thing. I'm guessing there's none that are within the field of special districts that would be useful.
There are ADP, you know, and companies like that do, or they say they do, you know, firefighter and police payroll, but my experience with them has not been good.
Okay. Honesty is perfect.
And so when and the other thing is, you know, if somebody has a payroll issue and they've, you know, forgot their overtime for 3 shifts.
Right.
You know, it's difficult to say. I mean, at least if we're in control, we can go in and drop another check if we miss something like that. But we have a redundancy built in to where, you know, Colleen processes, she enters the payroll, and then I check it. So we have that review process. I mean, errors happen, but we catch probably 95% of any errors before the process is finished.
And I would agree. I mean, I prefer an in-house person that I can know I would get on the other end of the phone during work hours to help out any problems with payroll. But
when we started thinking about this, I reached out to several different types of entities to specifically on payroll, and you know, what's my redundancy look like for, you know, Jane if Jane's got a family emergency or has to go out of the country for a month. Specifically with payroll, one, it's based, your service level is very much based on how much you're paying, how many employees they're processing, and 2, the quality control. And if a employee has an issue with payroll, the expedience which that can be resolved, that were all common issues that have come up and were expressed to me. So
perfect. Thank you.
Well, I know it's very important to employees. I can actually remember the name of the payroll technician at the city of Kettering, or it was Rhonda. I had a lot of conversations with Rhonda over the years because payroll's critical to your employees. If you want to have good working relationship with your employees, you have to have a good payroll department.
I would agree.
Well, that's the payroll department right down there.
Right there, I know.
It doesn't get any better
Well,
than that.
yes, right. We're doing fine now, but
Yes,
she
we
needs
are.
help.
And
She
risk
does.
management, and.
Yeah, everything else. Any other comments, questions? Okay, does someone want to make a motion to grant the fire chief authority to implement a part-time accounting assistant and payroll specialist position as described in the definition here in the attached position information and salary scale? Would someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Jackie, is there any further comments, questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Okay. Let's see here. At this point, we are ready for the fire chief's remarks.
All right, Commissioners, well, thank you for another outstanding work session today. I have a few remarks here that I want to make. The first thing is I have given you our draft of the district's comments from the authority having jurisdictions standpoint related to fire code, safety, and laws of the state of Florida, which the district is solely charged with enforcing. And it's relating to the redesign of State Road 865 and the Matanzas Pass Bridge. We were completely caught off guard when this proposal went public. Florida DOT didn't reach out to the district, obtain comments from us. So thanks to the diligence of our fire official, as soon as she saw the plan, she immediately reached out and scheduled a one-on-one meeting, which was very brief, and she saw major issues. So staff attended the public comment presentation that they did recently, 2 weeks ago, I believe, from an operations and emergency medical standpoint and from fire code and life safety standpoint. And we have collected those comments and concerns that we have on this project that we are going to transmit to the engineer of record for this process. Our biggest concerns center around, one, the redesign of the bridge. We are essentially going to, the preferred alternative is taking deleting the transit bridge, the lane coming onto the island, and is going to transform it to a 2-lane bridge coming onto the island with 1 lane exiting and adding traffic signals. Well, this is a concern because during season, like we are seeing now, we are going to have 3 lanes of packed solid traffic on that bridge with nowhere for our emergency responding vehicles to move traffic. We also have some concerns about pedestrian safety with the removal of the fixed concrete barrier that they have. I cannot tell you how many times over the last 20 years a pedestrian's life has been saved on that bridge when a car careens out of control and hits that barrier. We are also concerned about the impacts that the traffic signals that we're adding in the community. We have traditionally had 2, and now we have 4, and now we're going to have 2 more, and that impacts the flow of traffic. And it also is creating an unfunded mandate now in the district where if they provide preemption on the traffic signal, we're also going to have to fund the equipment and the technology in our vehicles and retrofit our vehicles so we can activate those preemption devices. So we weren't given adequate time for our fire officials to truly review this plan. So we've collected our comments, whether it makes an impact on the state's ultimate design. It isn't, but this is what, as a statutory authority having jurisdiction, is prudent to get our concerns and our comments on the record during this public comment period and make them known in case they proceed unilaterally. At least the fire district's concerns have been captured.
Wow.
Chief, is there any need or just a thought I've had in discussion with somebody else on I'm sure the engineers are looking at static loads on the bridge with 2 standing lanes as opposed to 1 standing lane, which we typically have now. But with the additional weight of, say, 2 of our trucks, which are not light vehicles, in addition to that additional static load, what it would do, and do we need to add that to this, or is it a conversation for later?
From what I understand from staff, that was actually raised already by some other elected officials in the community, that there was studies and that that concern about the additional weight of 3 lanes of standing traffic had already been raised and brought to the attention.
But then we add 1 or 2 of our heavy vehicles on top of it, and that,
Yeah.
the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak.
Well, there's cement trucks going over there.
Well,
for
exactly. I mean,
construction. Those are probably as
I know
heavy as
typically they
ours.
work on averages for static loads, not,
Right.
Yeah, previous councilman, Melsick, I think, is the one who said when he was on council, there were documents that said the bridge could not hold the load of 3 lanes of
I
stop
mean,
traffic.
it moves now with 1
Oh,
stop
I
lane.
know,
I'm sure
yeah.
we've all
Yeah,
experienced
there's
it.
no joke, that's true. So he was the one who brought that forward, to his credit, because that's the historical knowledge we all talk about, right? And that detail may have been lost. So I believe the town was looking into seeing if they could find that. I don't know where that went. So-
Well, actually, I think we were both at that meeting, and my perception was that was really kind of like the first time the state had
That
heard
anybody
that.
even thought about it.
And they were taking lots of notes about that. And that came up because the town was trying to maybe have 3 lanes of traffic across that bridge. And I believe at the time the state said they didn't think the bridge would
The bridge could
support
hold
it.
Correct.
And so they basically told the town no. And so that option kind of went away. And now, all of a sudden, the state's recommending the 3 lanes of traffic across the bridge. Nobody had looked into this previous.
I think they're trying to find that information now, so.
Do we have a ballpark weight on, say, a ladder truck or an engine truck?
Do you know what our gross vehicle weight is on that? Off the
So
top of your head?
our ladder truck is lighter than most because of its design, but it still runs about 63,000 pounds, but it does it over 3 axles. Just for comparison, the dump trucks that are bringing sand, you see them coming in Margaritaville, they can run up to 88,000
Okay.
pounds.
Yeah.
On their, they'll have that helper axle now,
Right.
so it'll be over 4 axles, but you now short the payload. So our fire engines run about 40,000 pounds.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chief, what's the state's rationale for eliminating protection for pedestrians?
Well, the preferred alternative is to put the metal rails up so they can expand the pedestrian walkway and allow for bicycle traffic. That's going to provide some protection, but I am always amazed at how much velocity traffic can get when they get on that bridge and they hit that concrete barrier. We've had, don't know what their rationale is, other than to, accommodate both bicycles and pedestrians, which has been a need on the bridge for a while. I can tell you that we have seen traffic accidents that move that concrete embankment, that when people hit it at the top of the bridge, and how they get enough velocity from the base of the bridge to the top of the bridge to hit a concrete barrier that hard is beyond me. So, but they have done it. So I'm truly have some concern about pedestrian safety on that bridge.
Yeah, and that was the rationale.
Is it going to be a guardrail or just like the handrails? I
Like the
mean,
ones that line the road when you're leaving the island that everybody
Oh,
goes.
they all-
Say the ones that
Oh,
get
yeah.
destroyed every time a car hits them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, you see what people do at the base of the bridge, right in front of the tiki hut and the ice cream store there with that,
Yeah.
metal barrier there, and that's more solid than those metal handrails, so.
And I think the idea was that the barrier has width, and they only have so much total width to deal with. Take out the concrete barrier, put in these skinnier rails, would give them enough space to allow
People
bicycles.
will get knocked into the water. It's going to be,
Man, yeah.
that's terrible.
So we have concerns, and, luckily Jennifer has worked with FDOT many times over her 20-year career as a fire official. So it's not uncommon for them to suddenly, we forgot fire and public safety. But it is important that we get our comments recorded in this period of time, so it's on the record, and that we demonstrate that we've done our due diligence.
Ron?
I
as-
think they
go ahead.
listened well. I'm sorry, they were actively listening, and I feel like they heard this, so I feel like we should see some changes coming back.
As the AHJ, do you have the ultimate authority? I know it says statutory, and I haven't read the statutes, but can the town or the state or the county override you?
The state can override us.
How do they do that?
The state, there's some special rules, and Jennifer and I are looking through the statutes on FDOT, but the state exempts themselves. Certain state buildings have special rules. Different parks have special rules for them. So that hopefully we don't have to get down that route. Other than the federal government and certain state buildings, when it comes to the administration and enforcement of the Florida Fire Prevention Code and the rules and laws passed by the legislators, there's really not too many people that can override the fire district's authority.
I just see lawsuits, the first person that's killed, or you couldn't get the ambulance to me, for example. That's going to be lawsuits.
As our fire official so eloquently put it, that's why this document is so important, because if somebody's house burns down, or somebody is trapped because our trucks are stuck in traffic, or we can't get to a cardiac arrest in time, or a pedestrian dies, and the lawsuit is filed, the fire district has done its due diligence and brought this to the attention officially. So Jennifer put that very eloquently in a meeting that her and I attended.
Good.
So we're protecting the community, and we're protecting the district from those situations that you're talking about.
It's great, and the documentation's important, but I'm more afraid of the fact that if they can pull rank on you, we're not safe anymore.
Hopefully, in my experience, once a letter like this goes out, it typically catches their attention, and higher-ups get involved, and they're like, okay, we need to take these into consideration. Very rarely have I brought something over 10 years as a fire marshal to the state's attention where they are like, we're going to go our own way or ignore it.
Yeah.
So.
Good.
Because they're
When do
assuming
you
all the liability.
anticipate
Yeah.
doing this? The
We're
sale
gonna
thing?
do this afternoon. We'll transmit this afternoon. We get it recorded by this February 17th deadline.
And is it going to be this document?
Yes, it's gonna be this document.
Great. Okay, any other?
No, good job.
All right, so the last couple things, want to let you know officially, February 10th was Battalion Chief Jake Lamb's last day on duty. He's taken a position as a deputy chief with Fort Myers Shores Fire District. He served the community for 20 years. We worked with our labor partners, and we did a little shift luncheon and presented him a nice little plaque to recognize his 20 years of service, and we wish him well. We are in the midst of another recruitment drive. We will be evaluating new applicants the middle of next month. And at this time, we currently have only one person on off-duty disability. We have one firefighter vacancy, and then we have 6 full-time equivalency firefighter vacancies, and then we have 6 minimum shift strength positions, which brings us to a total of 12 positions that are open in our operations branch. I'm excited to let you know we've extended a conditional offer for an IT administrator. So they are going through the pre-employment process, and we're very excited to hopefully have that position filled. HR is also conducting our assistant chief recruitment, and we're getting ready to do interviews for those 2 positions. So with Scott's promotion, we have 2 assistant chief positions that are now open, and I'm excited to say that this recruitment bank, we have several of the applicants that want to work for the district so much that they want to be considered for both positions. So we will not have to do separate recruitment. We're going to evaluate them for a potential fit in both of those positions. We have completed our nearly 16-month long process on our standards of cover, which is an independent operational evaluation of our emergency response capabilities. I'm hoping to have that an official presentation for the March business meeting. That will be really informative for all of you, because that's going to tell us how we're doing and how our resources are being utilized and how we're allocating resources. So that'll be really interesting for you guys. I had the pleasure of attending FPELRA, which is the Florida Public Employee Labor Relations Association annual conference. Our human resource manager was recognized for becoming a certified labor relations professional, and I also gave you copies. I also obtained that certification last year as well. Finally, and most exciting for the fire chief, is I provided you a copy. We have officially got the keys and have started working with our vendor for our organizational rewrite of our policies and procedures. So within the next 12 to 18 months, we will have a fire district policy manual, and we will have a fire district procedures manual, and we are going to be clearing up any ambiguity. We will be able to express the district's expectations to our staff very clearly, and we are going to have two documents that are going to be legally defensible, that are updated, that can be easily updated once a year and revised once a year with constant staff training, so they always know what their expectations are of the district and how to comply with those expectations in a very easy way. If you look at this, the template that we have gives us best industry practices as suggestions. It also gives us, if we look at 101.4, it also gives us specific state legislative language that are brought into our policies. And obviously, this is one of the shorter of the policies, what the fire chief and the district manager does. Overall, this is going to be a very, very important project, and it's going to be a little bit time consuming, but it's overall one of the critical foundations for long-term district success. And that concludes my remarks.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, we're at the attorney report. There is none. Commissioners' remarks. Jim, would you like to go first?
I don't have any,
John?
other than thank you for a great meeting.
So yeah, thanks for a great meeting, to everybody, the staff, Scott especially for
Yeah, this is great.
juggling our models and coming up with concepts, I think, that are a nice blend of the entire project as far as what I would vision as a citizen of the beach. And thanks to everybody.
Jackie?
Thank you for a great meeting. I enjoyed seeing the models. And just want to remind everybody about Senate Bill 2508. Please make sure you educate yourself on the potential changes that that bill may bring forward regarding our water quality and water releases and the LOSUM and the Army Corps. And if you are so inclined after educating yourself, please make sure to sign the petition if that speaks to you.
That vote's tomorrow, correct?
That is tomorrow, I believe, yes.
Thank you. Ron?
I echo what everyone else said. I like the models. I'm happy we can get Jane some help.
Jane's happier.
Yes.
Okay, I don't understand why we need an IT position when we have
Jane.
Scott
Oh.
up here.
Jane.
He's taking care of everything else. Yeah, no, I'm kidding, of course. But I do want to thank Commissioner Lezak for the refreshments.
You're welcome.
Otherwise, I have nothing else. If there's nothing else, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.